city or a town, a frown. The business of a crown, of the living that abounds, of the church and the announcements. It's doing what counts, the underground sound in a city or a town, a frown. The business of a crown, of the living that abounds, of the church and the announcements. It's doing what counts. The underground sound is the voice within, to give ear to the spirit and to flee from sin, to live for Jesus in the praise of Him, by not selling out for the praise of men, to do whatever it takes, no matter what the cost, to keep pushing up the weight, carrying the cross, straight bench pressing sin, defend the word that lacks, and your best mention Him, or then you gon' die. Cause the underground sound in a city or a town, the business of a crown, of the living that abounds, of the church and the announcements. It's doing what counts, the underground sound in a city or a town, the frown.
Hello, my name is Vlad Alhazov, all-time world record holder in the squat. Check out Scott Davenport's book, Scott Strong, to try something different and gain some size and strength. Vlad Alhazov.
All right, we are live and alive on the Underground Sound. We have the best mind in the industry, Justin Harris here. I just want to say this too before we get started for everybody. Pete always links my channel on the podcast. So if you guys go to my channel, I have done a podcast with Justin before, and it's really, really good. Justin's like my favorite person probably to listen to because he's so logical, makes sense. And Justin literally left the industry because he didn't like that people didn't follow science, and decided to become an atomic physicist because people actually respect science in that field before coming back. So I think that's really cool. I'm gonna attempt to stay out of this as much as possible. I think Pete's gonna have some really good questions to take this in. But there is another podcast that you guys can listen to, and I highly recommend doing it.
Yeah, so actually, like, one of your first troponin seminars I bought, like, probably 10 years ago. Yeah, you did with Shelby Starnes.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
That I had that, like, a decade ago.
That's like the coolest thing ever is so many people that because I follow you now and I have for years, so many people that I follow now have a story like that, and it's like really cool how it goes full circle, because it's like, oh man, now I'm a fan, I had no idea, now I'm a fan of yours, so that's cool.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Yeah, no, I first heard about you, I think, through Elite FTS. I think you and Shelby were both on there. I don't know if you guys still are, but
I do something with them every once in a while. I did a video with them. Well, I guess, geez, it's been almost a year now, so yeah, I do every once in a while, but I'm actually planning to head down there in a week or two with Ben Pollock and shoot some videos, so.
Yeah, you've been working with him, haven't you?
Yeah, for over a year now, yeah. But for about a year, real serious, yeah.
So, from what I've heard, he used to compete at 198. Like, I've seen him, I've done meets with him, and now you said he's up to like 275.
Yeah, PM weight. Yeah, we started. He was like 184. He did a men's physique show, and then decided. I think he didn't think he had enough size for bodybuilding, but if you're a powerlifter, you got to go bodybuilding. Your physique just is probably a bodybuilding structure. So we left that show and immediately went to adding size, and the dude's just an animal. I mean, he trains hard, he trains heavy, and so it was just a matter of supplying him with the right amount of food. But he's up about 90 pounds from July, so in 9 months, 10 pounds a month, I guess. Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and he's still shredded too. It's probably the most impressive size gain. I mean, it's artificial because it's not like he was weighing 198, competing at 198, So it's kind of artificial that he was like, but he set himself up for the perfect growth imaginable, because for years he was artificially restricting his weight and killing, his appetite was sky high. He was like starving himself for years trying to make weight. And then when you open the floodgates with that, and you got, your body's just ready to soak up nutrients from like basically being on a diet for years. So it's kind of the ideal situation. Not everyone's going to get that, but it's been fun.
So is he prepping for any meets coming up?
Yeah, we have planned for, everything keeps changing. The original plan was do junior nationals, USAs, and then big dogs. but then junior nationals and USA's for bodybuilding got pushed back. So now we're planning on nationals and still hopefully doing a powerlifting meet. He wants to, yeah, I won't say his exact numbers because it's changing, but he wants to, the ultimate goal is try to turn pro in bodybuilding and put up a really, really big powerlifting number, either at 242 or 275. Yeah, I think it'd be fun for him to go from 198 to 275 directly and one meet to the next. But I'm sure he'll want to cut to 242 if he's going to do a weighed meet. Those big dogs will just go in big, but
you got to keep him out of my weight class here. I'm 242. I'm like, let's just go 275. You know, and not keep him out of there.
Well, the problem is you can't tell because he's gaining like a pound a day. So every day it's hard to decide. 3 weeks ago 242 was easy, and 3 more weeks 275 might not be his weight class. I don't know. I've never seen him grow like that.
Is there an end goal in sight? Like, what do you think he can top out at?
Oh, he's got, as good as he is as a power lifter, I think he's got better bodybuilding genetics. He doesn't seem to slow down. He doesn't get sick. I mean, the bodybuilding training is really boring. And that's really what, if you don't love bodybuilding, that's what'll get you in the end, is kind of just losing the interest. It's hard to go in and do boring pump workouts over and over and over again, for arms and stuff. But as long as he can stay motivated, he'll be over 300 pounds lean. Yeah, because we're not pushing supplements hard or anything. We will, and like when prep starts, but he's got room in the tank for a lot more. So
is that all just food then? You're talking pretty much like diet manipulation.
He's 1,200 grams of carbs. We moved to 4 days. Well, we're 3 days a week right now. 1,200 grams of carbs. I mean, it's an insane amount of food. Yeah, he does 3 different days. On his days he doesn't train, we do like a lower carb approach with higher protein and higher fat. And it's actually kind of a little hypocaloric, a little below his baseline metabolism to try to get him a little glycogen deficient. So on any day he trains, we can really push the food. Now he trains 6 days a week, so it's only really one low day, but it is pretty low carb for him. And then his medium day, I think, is around 800 grams of carbs, like 400 grams of protein. And then his high day is 1,200 grams of carbs or 1,250 or something. It's just,
I can only assume, like, is the fat intake pretty low then?
Yeah, very low.
That makes sense.
The most difficult part of my diets is that I keep fats pretty low. On the low carb days, we bring them in, and the fats are really just in as healthy fats, just generally for cardiovascular health. But it's not just getting 1,200 grams of carbs in; it's 1,200 grams of boring. I mean, he eats 99.1 turkey all day, which to me is it's like eating sawdust. Yeah, but he's got all the tools for adding size. To add size, you got to be able to train hard, obviously enjoy that and get stronger. You need to have a tolerance for the supplements, because not everyone can take the high doses of supplements without feeling terrible. And then you got to have a really, really high appetite. And that's really where most people fail. Is everyone thinks that everyone has a high appetite when you're eating pizza. Having a high appetite when you're eating turkey and rice is different. And he's got that also. He just never runs out of the ability to eat.
How old is he? I forget.
32, I think.
Oh, mercy.
Yeah.
So he's not even old. Wow.
Yeah. He's got 5 years before he's in his prime as a bodybuilder.
Well, you serious? So you think about mid to late 30s, you start peaking as a bodybuilder?
Yeah, really, probably about 37 to 40 are your probably real prime years. 35 to 43, assuming you don't take any breaks. Now that's just because it takes so long to add the muscle and also to thin the skin. Because you look at someone like a Steve Kuklo, when we worked together when he was real young, he carried a lot of size, but your skin is just thicker. It's not like baby fat, but if you picture like Maria Shriver, like Arnold Schwarzenegger's wife. She was young, she has like a round face, and then as they get older, the skin thins, and she's got really hard, harsh, angular face now. And you can picture that with women or men. Or like you see your grandma or grandpa, and you practically can see that through their skin. The skin's so thin. That doesn't really start happening until your mid-30s. And so, aside from the fact that it takes so long to build muscle, I mean, you might get close to your peak at age 28 or something, but you're still adding a couple pounds a year. And so when you get to that real upper end, it takes a few years to build up, but it's really the thinning of the skin. And so for most bodybuilders, it's late 30s when you really hit your prime. And you look at like a Dexter Jackson, I think won the Mr. Olympia like 38 or 40. Ronnie Coleman won his first Olympia at 35. It was 42 or whatever for his last one. And that's really how it kind of always goes. Guys will burst on the scene. And to go back to Steve Kuklo, he turned pro at like, I can't remember if he was 24 or 25. He's 32 or 33 now, and he's just now starting to place really well at the bigger shows. It just, because his skin's starting to thin out. That's the biggest thing. So you can compete for years and years, but you really have a pretty short window where you're really at your peak.
No, I got a question for you as far as like diet. Would you say, I mean, can you even say this? Should there be more importance placed on carbohydrate intake or quality protein intake when it comes to trying to get stronger? Or do they both go hand in hand?
Hand in hand. And if you go just for fat loss, really what those studies show, and I don't agree with this 100%, because I think the studies are too short-sighted, but basically if you take two diets and you have X amount of protein and X amount of carbs, X amount of calories, it really doesn't matter what you do with the carbs or fat. So if you have 300 grams of protein and 2,500 calories, whether you make the rest of those calories up from protein or fat or carbs or fat doesn't really matter. But for adding size, I think it makes a big difference because fats are really appetite depressing. Meaning you eat a high fat, high protein meal, it's hard to eat again. You know, when you're eating like someone like Ben, you're eating almost every hour and a half to 2 hours to get those many calories in. And eating like a heavy red meat meal with added fat on top of it, it's very hard to eat again in 2 hours or an hour and a half. If you eat a very low fat, high carbohydrate, high protein meal, it digests much quicker, insulin spikes higher, it goes through the whole GI tract quicker, and you're ready to eat again quicker. So that's primarily why I stick to the higher carbohydrates.
No, I've heard though, a lot of people are like, all you need is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight.
Well,
so
you can do the math. I mean, our muscle is protein, right? So if, say, imagine someone eating 500 grams of protein a day. 500 grams is half a kilogram, which is a kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So 500 grams is 1.1 pounds of protein structures you're eating a day. If you're actually turning all 500 grams to muscle, you'd be gaining over a pound of muscle every day, or about 400 pounds of muscle a year. So clearly we don't do that. So if you run through the math and you pick someone who adds 15 pounds of muscle every year, which is a good rate, after your first couple of years, I mean, we've all been training for a while. It's not like I'm adding 15 pounds of muscle every year anymore. If I'm adding a pound or two, I'm happy at this point. But even if you take adding 15 pounds a day and you break that down to how many grams that is per day, or 15 pounds a year, how many grams that is per day, you're only converting 25 grams per day of the protein you eat to actually new muscle. So rather than just, rather than just dump protein on the problem, hoping more and more sticks, what's more important is that you set a baseline amount of protein where protein's steady throughout the day. You don't want peaks and valleys of blood amino levels. You want a steady protein level in your blood. And the reason is because you never know when protein synthesis is going to occur. You work out, I do a deadlift, and there's, an hour later, the muscles in my mid-back send a signal, mTOR is triggered, it sends a signal, says, I'm ready to synthesize some new protein. This muscle's damaged, let's add some protein structures to it. When that happens, all 20 amino acids have to be available in the bloodstream right then. 9 of those amino acids you have to get from the diet. And so you don't need a lot of them, because even 1 gram per hour is going to have you adding 15 pounds a year or 75 pounds of muscle every 5 years. So you don't need very much, but you need a consistent amount. And so what basically the idea behind the higher carbohydrate approach, and it's not a low protein diet, it's still high, it's just not 100% protein emphasis, is because the insulin is really what's beneficial. Because insulin, first of all, when insulin binds to a cell, that cell can't release stored energy. So you can't burn fat, you can't release any energy, you can't break down muscle from that cell. Secondly, when insulin is bound to a cell, it increases the amino acid uptake by the cell. So if you combine that with the protein and the trigger for muscle protein synthesis, you're much more likely to get the actual new protein structures to build. Sorry, today's my birthday. Actually,
oh, happy birthday.
Literally like 3 minutes ago is when I was born 41 years ago. And my
That's awesome.
Every 2 seconds, I got a message thing popping up saying someone wishing me happy birthday. It's hard to keep my train of thought, so I apologize.
I had no idea. Happy birthday, dude.
Yeah, thank you. But that's the reason, because just throwing protein at it is great. But you can kind of look at it. I always try to look at things in real simplistic terms. Like rather than building a muscle, let's pretend we're building a house. And so when I work out, that's creating the stimulus. So I'm like, the workout's like the foreman telling everyone where to build. And then the protein would be like the wood and the nails and all the materials. You can keep throwing more and more materials. You can have a great foreman say, we're building this wall right now. I got, 10 times more materials than I need. But if you don't have actual workers there to put up the materials, and the workers would be the things like insulin and stuff that actually facilitate the growth. And so that's really where everyone just kind of goes wrong, is they think, let's throw protein at the problem. I need protein to grow, but no one ever does the math to think, wait, I'm eating 1.1 pounds of protein structures per day. I'm not gaining a pound of muscle a day. So what's going on? So really what happens is almost all of the protein you eat doesn't get used as a protein. It goes through gluconeogenesis, gets turned into glucose. If that doesn't get used, it gets turned into triglycerides and fatty acids. If that doesn't get used, it gets stored as fat.
So basically, this will be the same with fat. There's a point of diminishing return to the amount of protein you eat, and even much lower with fat intake.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so like everyone in the sport, we get into the sport because we're extreme types of people. Everyone's like, go overboard more and more. More and more is better. And if that was the case, it would be much easier to grow than it is, because what's the first thing you do when you start training and you have the first thing you think of if I'm trying to grow is add more protein. That's the first thing everyone tries. And so if that was the answer every time, there'd be a lot less small guys. It's never the first thought, because if the first thing everyone thinks is, I need to get bigger, let me train more. Well, guys train more and they don't get bigger. Everyone thinks, I need to eat more protein. People add protein, they don't automatically get bigger. You got to go a little deeper. It's never that first level thought. And if you think something that simple is going to work, and if it's not going to work, because if it was that simple, everyone would already be doing it. So you kind of got to think, am I the first person to ever have this thought? Clearly not. Is everyone doing this? Not really. So it must not be the obvious approach.
I have a million questions. So as far as someone like myself, if I'm trying to optimize my strength levels while maintaining a body weight that's not moving, what's the difference in going about that? Because I want to stay close to 242. That's what I compete at. I really don't want to try to gain weight, but I want to get stronger. So how would I have to just have a baseline lower calorie intake?
Yeah, and there's a couple different things. First of all, there's two types of muscle growth. There's myofibrillar growth, which is actually, if you go in and there's the actual protein structures that contract and cross each other, that's the myosin and actin, the actual muscle contractile tissue of the muscle fiber. To get protein structure on those to grow is myofibrillar growth. That's only about 30% of your muscle. If you cut a bicep in half, only about 30% of that space is actual protein structures. The rest is fluid, cell volume, blood vessels, capillary density, all things like that. Growing that tissue is sarcoplasmic growth. And that's really the difference between bodybuilding and powerlifting. Why bodybuilders have that really round look, because they focus more on training for that sarcoplasmic growth. And another way to look at it would be to take a steak. A pound of steak is the full muscle. If you dehydrate it into beef jerky, how much smaller it gets, that's the actual protein structures. And so what you're trying to do as a powerlifter is maximize those and minimize, if you're trying to make a weight class, and minimize the sarcoplasmic stuff. And so really you don't want to do the blood volume. You don't want to do the nitric oxide. You don't want to do all the things to get a pump, because that's really kind of inflating the tissue and putting weight in the body that isn't contractile tissue, that doesn't serve any function. Now, as far as eating, there's a couple things you can do, because there's in the short term, you can improve strength by improving your leverages. And the way to do that is to put compression around the joints, which would be like a knee sleeve or wrist straps or elbow sleeves or knee wraps that compresses around the joint. A way to do that naturally is to increase the fluid volume, or the extracellular fluid volume around the joints.
Which is why DECA is good for powerlifting.
Yeah, exactly. And so in the short term, the way to do that would be to do really high sodium and high carbohydrate intake around your workouts. So you're as bloated as possible during your workouts to improve leverages. And so to do that while not gaining weight is, on the days you don't train, I would recommend take your calories pretty far below what your basal metabolic rate is. So if your BMR is like 3,000, on your off days, you're only eating like 2,300 calories with pretty low carbohydrates, really low actually, because you want to get glycogen depleted. You want to deplete the carbohydrates from the muscle. So then on your training days, you can bring your calories up to about around 3,000. And then once or twice a week, to make sure that your metabolism doesn't slow down, maybe once a week on a heavy training day, you take the carbohydrates sky high, like 1,000 grams. And what that is, I'm cutting short it real quick, but if you say someone like your size, maybe if they're eating 250 grams of protein a day, could maybe eat 500 grams of carbohydrates without storing any as fat, right? It's a safe bet. So then we say you have about 1,000 grams of glycogen totally in your body. So on those low days when you're not training and the days you're training, we're depleting that glycogen. Say we deplete 500 grams of that over the course of a week. That means one day a week we can eat 1,000 grams of carbohydrates. 500 grams of it you'll burn just naturally. The other 500 grams will get stored. But rather than storing it as fat, because we've created a glycogen deficient state, you'll store it as carbohydrates in the muscle. And so you will store the extra calories, but you won't store them as weight or as fat. You'll store them as muscle glycogen, which will fuel your training for the rest of the week and allow you to take the carbohydrates lower the rest of the week. And that's kind of like a really quick explanation. But the long and short of it would be days you don't train, very low carbohydrates, basically like you're dieting hard.
And low fat.
Yeah. And most of the days you train, moderate protein, moderate carbohydrates, and then maybe one day a week, really, really, really high carbohydrates. And then that you can play with the numbers to keep your weight stable, but that way any day you're training, you have enough carbohydrates to fuel training. Any day you're not training, you're low enough in calories that you're burning extra carbohydrates and extra fat to keep your weight down. And then to keep your metabolism from slowing down, one day a week, you take the carbohydrates really, really high, and you will store those extra calories, but because we've created a state where muscle glycogen is depleted, rather than store those calories as fat, we'll store them as glycogen, restore your metabolism, put you back to baseline, and you can continue doing that without a metabolism drop. Because that's the problem of training hard when you're trying to keep your weight down, is running low on energy, because you can't run a low carbohydrate diet forever. Your metabolism slow down, your training starts to suck. So this is a way to kind of reverse that. You can run a low carbohydrate diet long term, provided you supply enough carbohydrates to replace how basically over the 6 days of the week, however many grams of carbohydrates you get deficient, you want to add those back in the 7th day, so you're back to baseline. And then you can run low carbohydrates forever, keep your body weight down, keep your body fat down, without slowing your metabolism down.
Now, another question I don't know if you ever saw this, but Dave Tay worked with John Berardi for his nutrition to lose a bunch of weight and everything. And he claimed early on that his diet over the years had been so poor that when he started eating healthier, he felt sick. Well, I'm almost the same way. Like I've been getting away with for so long, eating whatever processed foods, and like I never put on body fat. And I don't know if this plays a role at all, but my resting glucose levels are always very low. So I never had that problem. But then if I try to eat like chicken and rice, I start feeling sick all the time. Like what's going on with that?
Well, I worked with Dave too, and we had the same problem with that. I think it's just like a transition phase. You're just used to really, really high sodium. Your body gets pretty well at adjusting whatever you do. And so what a lot of people do with their clean diets is they kind of take them too clean. My foods are clean in that I call it like a pick it, kill it, grow it diet. It's all foods you can either pick from a tree, grow in a field, or hunt for meat. And so, they're basically based around meat and rice. And so, or steak and rice. I mean, that is a clean diet, but that's not like you're not eating tofu or salads all day. I encourage really, really high sodium. So I heavily salt all my meals, encourage clients to heavily salt all their meals. And then even on my diets, at least one day a week, there's a huge cheat meal, a massive cheat meal to end the day. And then on the high carb days that I was talking about, half the carbs you eat can be all sugary carbs. I just try to keep the fat down. So you can, Skittles, Twizzlers, juice, things like that. So it's tough to say because there's no way I can say that eating junk food and processed food is optimal. It just isn't. And so to really, really, really hit that upper end, you might only be leaving 1 or 2% off, but 1 or 2% is the difference between being a top lifter and a world record holder. So at the extremes, that makes a big difference. You'll see lots of guys with all kinds of varied diets and varied strictness and stuff at the throughout winning state meets and doing very well and making a name. But you're not gonna. I shouldn't say this because I don't know all their names, but I wouldn't imagine you're gonna find someone like Yuri, eating terrible, or Dan Green eating. It's terrible. When I say terrible, it's really hard to say because a lot of the foods people think would be terrible really aren't. And it's because it's like a certain junk foods that people think are junk food or processed food really, really aren't. Like if you go and eat Thai food or something, or even a lot of Chinese food, it's really high sodium, but it's basically noodles and meat. Which is the same thing as rice and meat. It's just so there's different levels of what people think is junk. To me, junk is just straight pizza. There's poor quality protein. I'm sure you like that, but a little switch between that and moving to something like Thai food or sushi or even burgers and fries is going to make a difference. But I think I see you train. I know you burn a lot of calories training, so that helps you. But I think long term, really dialing it in, and when I say cleaning up the food sources, what I really mean is being precise with your macronutrients would make a difference.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna start working with you because, as Scott knows and everybody in the world, basically, my diet's always been pretty much a train wreck. Like, I honestly, I think, Justin, I think there's times I'm getting like 120 grams a day of protein and stuff. Because I never had a problem like staying lean. Like, I had that ectomorphic physique from day one. Like, always had abs showing. Never could lose them no matter what I ate. So I just ate whatever, and I just like got away with it. But obviously, that's not ideal for muscle building and strength. And I think you're right. I think it was almost when I would try going clean, I would basically cut out all my sodium, and I feel like crap. So I think that was a big part of it.
No, I think sodium's huge. Sodium's the biggest thing. That's my biggest pet peeve is when people think, I don't know how that got linked. I think as old Weeder magazines, they used to talk about low sodium. No, high sodium is the way to go. And actually what I'll have people do is especially when you're dieting with low carbohydrates, there's a way to kind of artificially create energy and create bloat and create leverages across your joints when you're trying to make a weight. Is add sodium to whatever you're drinking during your workout. So if you drink like an intra-workout shake, even like Gatorade or something, and then mix a little baking soda, like a teaspoon or two of baking soda in it, be careful if you do this, because if you're shaking up, the baking soda will make like because it's carbonated, it'll make like a volcano. So be a little careful with it. You can add straight salt, but I usually recommend baking soda because it brings the pH up, so it's less acidic of whatever your drink is. It's easier on your stomach. And that sodium will drive the carbohydrates in that intra-workout drink into the muscle, create a cell volumizing effect, create compression around your joints, and kind of even give you a pump and a fullness feeling even when you're really low carbohydrates. Sodium's key. A hydrated body burns fat better, builds muscle better. A dehydrated body is less likely to burn fat. You take a stalwart that's really dehydrated, it's going to be less likely to oxidize fatty acids for energy. It's going to be less likely to create new protein synthesis. And so low sodium is the worst thing you can do for strength, for physique, for anything as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I definitely more. I think I need to like hire you because everything's dialed in, but I'm a train wreck when it comes to my nutrition. And I even tell people that, like when I coach people, I'm like, I'm not doing anything for your nutrition. I'd be taking your money. I don't know what I'm doing. So that's been the biggest weakness for me. And I feel like to optimize everything, I could use some help. But yeah, as far as, man, I'm trying to think. I got so many questions.
Well, I just want real quick as far as the diet. I think the clearest proof that what the difference diet actually makes is if you look at powerlifting from like the mid 2000s to now, and in the mid 2000s with all the triple ply gear and stuff, a lot of it was just how much fat can I cram into a suit, and the raw numbers were terrible, and even the geared lifts weren't that much more impressive than guys are doing raw now. And I think the biggest difference is that look at the guys at the upper end of powerlifting the last 5-6 years compared to the way they looked 10 or 15 years ago, and they compare their strength. And the biggest difference is diet. Powerlifters are much. It used to be almost like a sense of pride in powerlifting in the mid 2000s of eating like shit. But guys aren't doing that anymore, and the numbers are going sky high, and guys are looking more and more like bodybuilders. Guys are just freaks now in powerlifting, and I think the biggest reason the numbers have shot up so much in the last 10 years is the increased scrutiny with diet.
Okay, I gotta ask this: if you if you were in charge, Justin, of Pete, and like his opinion didn't matter at all, like looking at his genetics and everything, like what would you do with him, and what would you want to like would you? Because I think Pete could probably do some type of physique contest. He's got, I've seen him freaking really ripped. Would you have him get hella lean and shredded, or would you just like go for world records in powerlifting?
World record. I would love this. I think Pete's got a massive deadlift in him. If he put it, I would try to turn you into like a food processing machine, where our only goal is putting more and more food down you and building your metabolism to not gain weight, but get you to where we have your metabolism so sky high that you're just eating so much food that you can hardly stand it, and maintaining your weight. Because when we get to that point, what that means is that there's just such an influx of nutrients constantly that your recovery is maximized, your growth is maximized, your body fat levels are maximized. So if you can think like I'm trying to think of an analogy, but it's like you never know which protein is going to be the one that does the work. And so you never know which carbohydrate is going to be the one that restores the glycogen. So so if we can get it to where we have twice as much protein and twice as much carbohydrates coming in without getting fat, that's twice as much chance that when you need that protein synthesis, when you need that exact nutrient, it's going to be available. And that's really what I pretty much do with everyone, is just everyone has different levels. Like someone like you, with your metabolism, it's going to be probably really, really, really high calorie. But that's better. That's really what you want. The more food you can eat, the more everything you can do, basically.
1 second. Lucy! Pitbull. All right. We gotta get the
Would you
I'm breaking up a dog bar. We're good.
do you like eat at 242, or do you think I always tell him 275? I think he should go, but
what do you walk around at?
Lucy, stop. What do I walk around at?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's chaos for a sec. 248, roughly.
Oh man,
You
can make 198.
Oh dear God! Here, I'm down for the challenge, but I'm scared. I'll do it. I'm just terrified.
40-pound weight cut for a 24-hour weigh-in is about the most you want to go.
I've cut 23, and I felt like I was gonna die. But
how did you do it?
I cut it about over 5 days, just to cut out calories and water manipulation. I've never used like diuretics. But that felt like death. I went from like 252 to 229 in 5 days.
I mean, lots of people, my favorite approach, I like to cut sodium first, not water, to get as much weight as you can with cutting sodium. Because then when you add the calories back in, add the sodium back in, you get a better bloat rebound, and you're actually much, much, much stiffer around your joints. That's what I think is the best approach. But I mean, I probably wouldn't make you go. I would try to get you in walking around at over 275, but still competing at 242.
Wow.
What about the one thing? Actually, Scott mentioned this, so I'm curious what you're going to say about this. My biggest fear with gaining weight is blood pressure and things like that.
Blood pressure is really easily treated. I mean, if you're not afraid to go to a doctor and get on like an ACE inhibitor or an ARB or something, blood pressure is not. I mean, they're really effective, and actually. We build into it. It's not like we go from just doing nothing to, bloating you to 275 in 3 days. It's all like, it's clean food. It's, it's a gradual weight increase. It's not huge jumps. And so your body has time to adjust.
So you think too, like you can do a big weight cut and not have it negatively affect your performance on meet day or increase the chance of injury?
No, I don't think so. And in certain cases, I think it improves your performance. The weird thing about the body is there's like a weird rebound effect. And this happens in bodybuilding when you compete, is after you diet down really, really hard and really low calorie, your best growth is immediately after that. And I think the same thing it's similar in powerlifting, is that the rebound, because your body overcompensates with everything. After you make the weight cut, your body is so set on storing water and storing sodium that it just stores so much extra that the compression around your joints is even higher. And I think that's why you see, that's why you see guys that there isn't a big weight drop. The totals don't really drop at the lower weight classes. 198, 220, 242, they don't shoot right up. And I think the biggest reason is it's because those guys cut so much weight, like Matt Kozlowski, when he did his 220, he was walking around at like 260. And so when he was on the platform, he was 216. And
Dan Green too.
Yeah, same thing. So Ben was like, he was going to cut we were 226 and he wanted to cut to 181. And so that's the thing, is you're not 181. You're only 181 on the scale. You won't be, you cut to 220, you won't be 220, you'll be 260 on meet day.
Do you even think I feel like I'd have to like cut off my arm to make 220?
No,
I get so lean.
70% of your body is water.
You really think I can make 220?
Yeah. You could.
You want to try? You want to try it?
Survive. You could probably make 198 and survive. Maybe survive.
I'll work with you. What do you think about going 220 then, and next April?
Oh, for sure. No, I think we can make 220 in 72 hours if we plan it right.
God, you're scaring me.
It's not fun. My dog's home now. Sorry.
See, this is what I was talking about. Though. This dog hates the husky. The husky's outside the door. That's what we're doing.
Oh yeah.
Where is he?
Man, that's crazy, man. It's just like,
I mean, I'm open.
This one's mine.
oh, cool.
I'm open to the idea, but I'm terrified. So,
I mean, I've had. I can't say a number, but I've been doing it for 15 years. I've never had someone not make weight. The only time I had a guy not make weight was by choice because he got pretty close and he was just sick of the cut and he just wanted to go for Wilks. But I've had guys make really big drops and come back and put up their PRs on everything. And the reason you're putting PRs is because if we make 220, you'll be lifting in the 250s.
Because I'd be shredded at 220.
Well, you won't be 220. You'll be 248.
But I'll be shredded for weighing.
Yeah, actually, you'll probably look like shit. You'll be so deflated. You'll look like a skeleton. But you'll be shredded. But you really won't. We won't cut you to 248. That's 28 pounds. We could do that all day. You wouldn't have to drop any weight. It would just be pure water cut. It won't be fun, but you'll be back. You'll be lifting at like 255 24 hours later.
The next meet would be 44 weeks. So.
What's the record at 220?
2100. Kaylor Wallem.
Oh,
which I love Kaylor. I don't want to start things with people, so I'm not naming any goals. But I mean, that's just what I'm just stating what the record is.
Yeah, if you're walking around 240, 248, 242, you should be able to put up at least as big a numbers at 220 without really any difficulty.
I could get down to 240 body weight, literally just by eating a little better.
You could, but I wouldn't even bother. I mean, cutting from 250 to 220 is only 30 pounds. I'll actually send you an article that I detail it. I think it's exactly 30 pounds, and I do the math behind it based on like a gallon of water is 8 pounds. Every gram of glycogen you store brings 3.5 grams of carbohydrates with it, and I break it down gram by gram and show exactly how the weight comes down and how it comes up for a 30 pound weight cut. I'll send you an article.
Keeping it on the real. Would any of that involve like diuretics? Because I've used ACE inhibitors, but that's it. ACE inhibitors, I'll lose 5 pounds. What about IVs afterward?
All that stuff makes it easier. It's not required. It's just easier.
Okay, because I just don't know how accessible IVs are. But as far as like anabolics, so this is really interesting because in the past I've experimented. I've done your typical stupid thing where I'm like, let's see how much I can take and see if it makes a difference, and it makes no difference. Like I've gone up to like literally one time 1750 test, 1400 MPP, and then like 100 Anavar, 40 Halo before a meet. So we're talking like 2,800 milligrams. And I saw like literally there's a point of diminishing return is what I found. Like anything for me, from what I've found, I've ran 1 million cycles. From what I've seen, anything over 750 tests, I don't get anything. And for like NPP, anything over 400 or 500 milligrams, I get nothing.
It seems like, and I've written about this a bunch, but to me, from my experience with a lot of people, it seems like there is an increase in everything. More is better up until somewhere around 2 to 3 grams for most people. Total stuff.
Really?
Yeah, total stuff. Well, and it's different for everyone, but that's where it really starts to trail off. And even when you start going above it, you start running into things where you have appetite issues, you can't eat, your sleep is terrible. And if your sleep is terrible and your training's like shit and you can't train, taking more actually makes you worse, And so there is an up run somewhere around, and it seems like it depends on the compounds and it depends on the person, but somewhere north of about 2 grams, you really start losing any benefit of. And like basically what you just said, you can argue about where that level is, but it's clearly there's a point where, because what is it doing? And I'll go back to the building a house analogy. And so in this case, your training is your foreman, your food is the raw materials, and the supplements are the workers. And so the supplements are the workers. And so you. I'll give them a second.
Good God. Lucy, stop. Alice,
okay, you said so the protein is the materials. Is that what you said?
Well, this is a different analogy, but it's kind of the same thing. It's like what's directing the action and what's the limiting factor in the action. And so if we say that the training is like your construction manager, your foreman, and the food is all the materials, then in that case, the gear is the number of workers. Your supplements are the number of workers. And you can keep adding more and more workers, but there's only so much material you have. And so if you're trying to build a wall and you have all your material set up and you have 800 employees, you don't build the wall any faster. There's only so many can work. And even worse is if all those.
Yeah, I mean, that does make sense, though, what you're saying. Like, whereas that would totally pinpoint what was going on for him.
Yeah, I mean, everything's got to be in order. You know, you know, if you supply too much food and you don't have enough workers, all you do is get material piling up, and that's body fat gain. Everything's got to be, you know, precise. There's the right amount of everything. We always have the idea that more is the right amount, but more is only better if more accomplishes more. If more doesn't accomplish more, then it's just more. And in some cases, it can be less, you know, and so you can say like with the supplements, where if too much starts killing your appetite, then that's less food, that's less material. So that's basically like you have a bunch of extra employees, but some of the employees are worthless and they break the wood, they break nails, and you actually slow the progress that way. What you want is the optimal number of workers for the optimal amount of wood and a good director telling them where to put it. So you want the directors like your training, you want a good training program outline. You want the proper diet outline, so you have the exact right amount of material, so you're not gaining fat, but you're never short of materials when you need them. And you want the right amount of workers, so everyone's doing a job that's most effective and most effective with the amount of materials that you have. And so that's how it all comes together with your training, your diet, and your supplements.
Now, I'm just interested. How much do you think? How much health risks and stuff do you think guys like, you know, like Eddie Hall? He had to like literally quit strongman because he said he was pushing it so hard he felt like he was like on the verge of death all the time. Like, yeah. How much of that is true, and like what was going on?
It's the competition, and part of it is that guys just get afraid that they're not doing enough. Now, as far as off-season training and the bulk of your year, it doesn't need to be. I mean, it's not a health endeavor. You know, you're not doing it to be the healthiest man on the planet. You're doing it to be the strongest man on the planet. But it really comes down to the problem that gets people who train hard, powerlifters, strongmen, bodybuilders, is blood pressure. If you keep blood pressure, what happens is the high blood pressure strains the kidneys and damages the kidneys, which then, and since we got all the time here, I'll explain the whole thing. So your kidneys are like a coffee filter. You know, they're a filtering material. If you place a coffee filter under a faucet, you can run that water all day, and that coffee filter is never going to get damaged. It'll work just fine. Now, if you spray a fire hose at that coffee filter, it's going to start ripping apart the coffee filter. And that fire hose is higher pressure. That's like a higher pressure in the blood. The high pressure in the blood will damage the filtering structure of the kidneys. What that does is make your kidneys not filter as well. And then you get a backlog of an overload of fluid and not necessarily toxins, but waste products that you can't filter out. And so what that does is your heart has even more blood to pump. If there's only so much space in your body, in your blood vessels, so more fluid means there's more fluid in the exact same amount of space, which is going to increase pressure. So your heart's pumping against a higher pressure. And so you imagine squeezing against a higher pressure, that heart muscle is going to grow, just like any other muscle. The problem is the heart muscle, like your shoulder, when it builds, it grows outward. The muscle of the heart grows inward and inside the cavity. It makes the cavity smaller. So each pump pumps less blood. So then the heart has to speed up. So you have a faster heart pumping against a higher pressure. Eventually the heart kind of wears out or tires, and what it has to do to fix things, and the only way it can try to fix things is to dilate and get bigger. But when it dilates, it actually weakens the muscle. And then it's eventually something called dilated cardiomyopathy. And then that doesn't pump as much blood. Your kidneys are working less. And then eventually that fluid volume increases until you get pulmonary edema, which is fluid in the lungs. And that's kind of end-stage heart failure. And that all stems from elevated, untreated blood pressure. If you keep blood pressure under control and blood sugar under control, you cut out all that worry. And that's really the number one. People talk about liver and stuff. It's not. What strength athletes need to worry about is blood pressure and kidney function. And if you keep your blood pressure under control, which you can do with medication, and the medication does not. I don't know where this comes from, but every once in a while, someone will tell me that they're afraid to take blood pressure medication because they think it'll make them weaker. Like they think the pressure in their blood somehow causes their strength, which it doesn't. And in some cases, certain things like an ACE inhibitor, which dilates the microvascular, and actually ACE inhibitors have been shown to increase IGF-1, and they increase the blood flow to the microvasculature, so it actually helps you oxidize fat from the areas that you don't normally get a lot of blood flow to, which would be like the abdomen or the glutes, which is areas you don't want to store fat because they're not fat around your joints. They don't provide any leverage in lifting. And so actually, certain blood pressure medications could actually improve your strength.
Now, Justin, like, how important are lipid panel? How important is that for health?
Because you're not going to have a good lipid profile with male hormones.
Well, I got one question with this, because I've seen I could run any compound outside of testosterone. My HDL gets destroyed. Even I could run Anavar. Anavar is going to cut my HDL by at least 50%, if not like 66. So that's a false thing where people like Anavar is just perfectly healthy. Yeah. Anavar has had no effect on my liver enzymes, but my HDL gets destroyed. One thing though, I've always had pretty good luck with HDL. Like I've hit 60 before. It tends to be around 50.
That's impressive.
Except not on cycle, obviously. On cycle, it'll drop 10, 15. It'll be in the 10 to 15 range, like period, on orals especially. But my LDL, no matter what I do, no matter what I'm on, I cannot get it to budge from 140.
You're not going to have low LDL with high androgens or high male hormones. And really,
what if I'm just on a little bit of test though?
You can look at how the way test is synthesized in the body. The way men create testosterone is from cholesterol.
Okay.
Cholesterol gets converted to androstenedione, which gets, through a whole process, gets converted to testosterone. So high LDL or high lipid levels is actually what creates high testosterone levels. You can almost look at it as you can really almost look at it as LDL is masculine and HDL is feminine. High estrogen levels will improve your HDL. And low testosterone levels will improve your LDL. You are not going to get a really high HDL and a really low LDL with high androgen levels. It's just a masculine trait is to have high LDL and low HDL. And the more masculine your blood is, the higher your LDL is going to be and the lower your HDL is going to be. So you can artificially raise your HDL even with high, masculine effects with high androgen levels by having high estrogen levwhich is you're always, arguing, what are the side effects of estrogen? One of the good side effects of high estrogen is it improves your HDL. But one of the bad side effects is that it raises your body fat. It changes your body fat distribution. So there's, it's kind of like a yin and yang with all of this. But you're not going to have high blood androgen levels and have good lipid profile. And which is a big reason why men die of heart disease more than women. Even that's arguable because the science isn't 100% clear on the relation between cholesterol levels and cardiovascular health. But women are always going to have better lipid levels than men, and men, when they get higher male hormone levels, are always going to have even worse than regular men.
Well, okay, so my last blood panel was this is on 125 milligrams a week of test. It was 48 HDL, 143 LDL. Triglycerides were 80.
That's about as good as you're going to get.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then, what was I going to say? I'm trying to think here.
And I don't want to downplay the effects of keep your cholesterol, but there is no real clear corollary scientific data that shows that there's a direct correlation between poor blood lipids and heart health. Where that came from is early on in cardiovascular medicine. They knew that plaque was causing heart attacks. That plaque buildup was what was leading to heart attacks and blood and clotting of the coronary arteries. And so they said, where does this plaque come from? It must come from cholesterol. And so they, with no studies, they assumed that high cholesterol levels cause heart attacks. No studies ever confirmed this, and any real large research studies done on the subject show that there really is no difference. Meaning, people with heart disease are just as likely to have good or bad cholesterol levels. And there's no indication that if someone gets worse cholesterol levels, that there's an increased risk of heart disease. Now, the problem is how do you treat that? Because if you are a cardiologist and you see these studies and you say, okay, there really is no clear evidence, let me tell my patient that they don't need to take cholesterol medicine because it doesn't really help them. If they do because cholesterol is not related, and they say that, and they tell them not to take cholesterol medicine, and the person does have a heart attack, that patient's going to say, I had a heart attack because you didn't give me cholesterol medicine, and they're going to sue the doctor.
That makes
it's really
sense.
Kind of a big thing. Because I used to work for Beaumont Hospital, which is one of the top 10 heart hospitals in the country, and the cardiology group I went there, one of the physicians who was a really good interventional cardiologist was really big on that, and went so far as to not prescribe cholesterol medications to patients. But it's always a risky move because the patient doesn't know, and they're just as likely to have the heart attack with or without it. And if they do have it without it, so I mean, just as a caveat, and I'm not a physician, so take what I say with that caveat that I'm not a physician, but your LDL is always going to be high if you have high estrogen levels. Try to get your HDL as good as you can. That's the best thing you can do to mitigate problems, but your LDL is always going to be high.
LDL is tied to estrogen as well. Your estrogen levels, you said? HDL
is. You can. It's a loose correlation, but if you have high estrogen, your HDL is going to be better. If you have high androgen levels, your LDL is going to be higher.
Here's something this is what I was trying to say. Like, every time I take Arimidex, I feel terrible, and crashes my. I'm super sensitive to it. It crashes my estrogen levels, and I feel like crap. But when my estrogen levels are as high as 100, 150, I feel fine.
Yeah. So if you don't have side effects, estrogen is really, that's partly why women live longer than men. It's because estrogen has it improves bone density, it decreases risk of cardiovascular disease, it changes body fat distribution into an estrogenic body fat distribution, which is less linked to heart disease than an androgenic body fat distribution. So, from a health standpoint, estrogen is pretty good. And if you can have higher estrogen without any negative physique effects or negative strength effects, then I'm not going to tell you to try to lower your estrogen. There's really no reason to.
And then what about so this was a year ago, I got a plaque score, calcium plaque score done on my heart. I was at 2. I don't know, is that decent? Or I know the lowest you can go is 0.
That's lower. You want as low as possible. I really don't remember what was that CRP. I can't remember that number right now.
It goes, the lowest number you can get is a 0, and anything below 10 is considered good.
Yeah, feel like, 2 is good. It's difficult to get a 0. I've seen a couple zeros, but from what you're telling me, it sounds like you're about as healthy as I've ever seen from a power lifter. So I'd say you're probably doing the right things. But like I said, how many powerlifters or bodybuilders have had to leave the sport because of heart attacks? I can't name very many. I can name 20 powerlifters or bodybuilders if I sat right down with a pen and paper that have had to leave the sport or had to briefly leave the sport because of kidney issues. And the kidney issues stem from high blood pressure. What kills bodybuilders and powerlifters and strongman competitors is high blood pressure that causes renal failure. That's the number one thing. You want to keep everything healthy, but if you're worried about what's immediately going to take you out of the sport and cause serious health effects when you're young, it's going to be the blood pressure. If you keep your blood pressure under control, you're pretty safe as a strength athlete.
So the reason too, Pete, you missed this, but the reason your high supplements weren't working is because your nutrition sucked.
So I'll go back to that same analogy of building a house. Is then in this case, your training is still the foreman, your diet is the materials, and then the supplements is the workers. Now you can have 800 workers to build a wall, but if you only have 3 pieces of wood, it doesn't matter how many workers you have. If your diet is bad, there's nothing they can do. And in some cases, if too many workers actually kill your appetite, then they start damaging materials, So not only you have too many workers to build a wall, but some of the workers are breaking nails and getting in the way. And so that's why with the gear, you want to find that optimal range. And that's why I said, for most people, it seems like once you get above about 2 grams of total stuff per week, you just it stops being beneficial. You have more workers and not enough materials. And at that point, if it sounds to me like if you think it's lower than 2 grams, then that's probably an even stronger indicator that you need to improve the diet. Because if the diet's dialed in, you should be able to up that. You should be seeing benefit up. At least at a gram. If not
of test, you're saying?
Yeah, about 2 grams of total stuff per week if your diet is dialed in. If you're seeing a level enough below that means that the diet's the limiting factor, not the gear.
That's fascinating to me because I've done super low doses of test. I'm on 125 right now, and I'll get pretty strong, and then I'll actually start my cycle and I'll be taking 5 times the amount, 5-10 times the amount, and I get I don't get hardly stronger at all.
Yeah,
so that's just diet then.
Yeah, that's what it is. And then also, and strength is a little bit different than muscle size. You're not going to look like a Mr. Olympia competitor without gear. But if you look at the world record numbers between tested and untested, they're not that dramatically different. So you can get really strong with relatively low androgen levels or low supplements as long as everything else is dialed in. But if your supplements if you think your limiting numbers are that low, to me that means that there's the diet issue because you should be seeing improved results from gear up to about 2 grams a week or more.
Holy crap! All right, so I realize I've been slacking hard on that. All right. I mean, it's kind of cool at the same time though, because you know that if that's your ceiling, then you haven't even scratched that potential. If you haven't.
No, man. Well, that's why I was kind of excited to do this actually, because I mean, I followed you for years and I've talked to a lot of people who know you, and that's kind of what I've heard is with your diet. And someone was like, oh man, this guy's got like a 950 deadlift in him. If we could just get his diet together.
I eat terrible. I'm not gonna like it's. You'd be embarrassed if you heard it. I'd be embarrassed. We'd all be.
Yeah. See, yeah, like, do you have how many minutes after a meal do you train?
I can train like pretty much 30 minutes later.
Okay, but do you have an exact amount? See, like when I talk to like someone like a Ben Pollack, he wouldn't even, he knows his exact time, whatever it is, like 70 minutes, and he wouldn't dare start a movement before like everything is dialed in to the minute. And so that's one of the big things is like if you're not that way with your diet, there's so much room to improve. Well, like most guys know, like it's not meal 3. It's it's my 2 o'clock meal. You know, every 7 days a week I'm eating. You know, for me it's 8 a.m., 11 a.m., 2 p.m.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Yeah, and those things.
I probably eat about 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
Breakfast is like, oh, I mean, I'm gonna be brutally honest here because then you're just gonna laugh at me and pick it apart. But breakfast is always 5 whole eggs and a box of macaroni and cheese. That's pre-training meal, and then I'll have 50 grams of whey protein post-training, and then I'll eat maybe a little after that. I'll eat like a bag of chips, a whole bag. No, I'm still a whole bag of family-sized chips, and then I'll eat like 2 Hot Pockets or something. And then in the evening, I'll eat like some fried chicken tenders or something.
How about let me break it down like
I'm not joking.
This. You clearly have a talent for powerlifting, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, clearly you're genetically inclined powerlifting, especially deadlift. Why are you not breaking world records in the deadlift? Name someone who's clearly head and shoulders genetically above you, deadlifting structure. They're not training harder than you, are they?
Well, the only person like
do you think the guys that are putting bigger numbers up than you are doing it because they're training harder, or do you think you're training pretty?
I think my training's dialed in.
Exactly.
100%.
So, and you have the genetics to put up world record numbers. So why are you not a world record? Why are you not putting up world record numbers?
You're right.
The diet. I mean, to me, that's what it is. You're not getting out trained by anybody. Your genetics for the sport are very good, and so your genetics are. In my mind, if I were you and I love powerlifting, and I had the potential to put up, world record numbers, all-time world record numbers, why am I not doing that? And if I have that potential, I'm not doing it. Let me find out the reason I'm not, and what am I missing, and do I want to put those numbers up or not? How important it is to me.
No, you're right, because I've just always been lazy about it. Because like I said, the only reason I've been lazy about it is because I can eat whatever and I don't get fat. But I think it is something I need to take serious to get to the next level. Because I'll be honest, my training, 100% knowledgeable about that, is dialed in. I know what I'm doing. Even supplementation wise, I have a pretty good approach. Like I know how to be efficient with that. It's just the diet that's the missing factor.
What I'm saying. I know your training's dialed in, your genetics are there, and your supplements are there. So the only thing left is diet. And so the only whatever your max level is, but I think your max level is world record numbers or at potential. I don't think any of the top guys are genetically superior to you, and I don't think they're training harder than you. So.
Yeah, I think like I said, it's going to be a hell of an experiment, but I think we might as well give it a go. Now, one thing, as far as like natural supplementation, I'm just going to lay it out right here real quick. It's not much, but this is what I take naturally, natural supplements on a daily basis. So I am on 125 milligrams of test enanthate per week, split up into 2 doses, Monday and Friday. Basically, I'll be running that for about 26 weeks to I don't know if this is a real thing, but I'm trying to reset my receptors and get as strong as I can. Well, I'm trying to get as strong as I can on as little as possible.
No, I agree with that 100%.
But the receptor thing, okay, well, we'll get into that later. But so natural supplementation wise, 10,000 IUs of vitamin D3 because my D level was awful on my blood work. I added that in because I got lazy with that. I'm doing my DHEA levels were low, so I added in 50 milligrams. I don't know if that's important, but
can't hurt. They're probably low because you're supplementing with test, but they can't hurt to bring them up.
And then I'm taking this supplement called, it's for my sponsor, IR. It's for glucose support, lipid support. It's just a health supplement. And then I'm also just taking prescription natural desiccated pig thyroid, 30 milligrams, because My TSH is always a little. It's in the normal range.
Hang on 1 second. I'm sorry. I keep getting my mom's trying to FaceTime me. Let me hold on 1 second.
No, you're good.
Joy? She's gonna try again. I keep declining her. She hates me. I'm calling my son on his birthday. You know.
I didn't even know we were taking up time on your birthday. I feel bad, but.
Oh, that's okay.
I had no clue.
Hang on 1 second. I'm gonna try to accept this and let her know.
All right, you're good.
Bro, so that's the key, man, is your biggest weakness is your nutrition. And I think
we knew it, Scott. We knew it.
Like, you know, it's like when Matt Winning was talking about, though, like, you have to build your body that way where you, like, pinpoint your weaknesses and build them. It actually makes sense, like, on another level, like, all these different factors that if you work on that nutrition, I literally think that's going to push you to a freaking whole nother level. Like it's going to have crazy results just because you've been so bad about it. Like,
yeah, and you know, I think already I was going to have a heck of a meet coming up in, you know, early next year because I've optimized my training so much. I know what I'm doing there, like supplementation wise, I know what I'm doing. Mobility wise, I know what I'm doing. It's just that one missing link. Like, look at what I got in front of me right now. You know.
You know what, Justin? So he'll like he said, he'll have you eating that kind of stuff once a week on your high carb days. He has you eat like fruity pebbles and freaking soda and juice and all the stuff that you love, which is cool because
I think
it's a cheat meal.
I think what scares me most is the amount of food. That's what's scary. But no.
You're gonna shovel down some rice, bro.
I know it's gonna be rough, but no. The only other thing I take naturally was it's a prescription, but natural desiccated pig thyroid. So the reason for that is my TSH, it's always in that 3.5 to 4.5 range. It's got as high as 4.8, and like my doctor's like, well, optimally you'd be like under 1.
Yeah.
How do you feel about thyroid? Because the funny thing, you'll go to 90% of doctors, 95, and they'll just be like, oh, you're within normal, you're fine. And I'm like, no, it should be lower than 3.5.
Yeah. Are you doing Armor? Is it the Armor thyroid?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, work with your doctor on that. Having low thyroid, low T3 levels is not going to help you. So you want that to be in a good range. If your doctor says that's what's putting you in a good range, then do that. I mean, you don't want really high T3 levels because it's going to be difficult to put on muscle, but you don't want low T3 levels at all because that's
okay. So that's a question: is 10,000 IUs a day overkill?
Or the Armor thyroid?
No. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, you're saying T3. I thought you said
yeah.
T3.
No. Yeah. Your D3 is good. You definitely don't want low vitamin D. But for the Armor thyroid, if that doctor if that's putting you in a good range, then do that because you don't. The only problem is some doctors, because 99% of the people they're going to want to lose weight. Some doctors will take the dose a little higher than they need to because they know it'll keep your weight down. So just make sure he's doing it optimally, not putting it at the high end.
Now I've heard high TSH or inactive thyroid can lead to high LDL.
Yeah, no, high TSH means you have low T3. And so he's giving you Armor thyroid, which is a combo of T4 and T3, so to put you in a good range, because without it, your T3 would be low because your TSH is high. The TSH means that your body's trying to put out more thyroid because it senses there's low T3. So what I'm saying is he's probably got that. That's correct. You don't want low thyroid levels or high TSH. But but be careful because a lot of doctors will assume that you want low, like the high TSH means that you have low thyroid levels.
Yep.
So the doctor's going to assume you want high thyroid levels because that'll keep your weight down because 99% of the population, that's what they want. So that's the only thing to pay attention to is I see that a lot of doctors will slightly overprescribe thyroid medication because they know it'll keep the patient's weight down. And even though it's artificially keeping it down, the lower weight increases their health or life expectancy because low body weight generally means you'll live longer. And so a lot of doctors will do that without telling you. So just make sure it's in a normal range, not the high end range, because that'll make it harder to add muscle.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I try to keep it pretty simple. That's like literally 4 supplements. So I don't know.
I love simple. I think especially just in general, as strength athletes, we're eating a ton of calories, a ton of food. The chance that we're going to be nutrient deficient is almost zero. I think most of us worry far too much about adding extra supplements when, as a general rule, Americans are dying from too much nutrition. We're not dying from malnutrition. So I like to keep supplements as minimal and as possible, and only hit the ones we know we need to hit.
I've taken a lot of over-the-counter supplements before, multivitamins, things like that. I saw no change on my blood work, and I was like, what the heck, man? Like, it kind of made me mad because I'm like, well, it's not doing anything apparently.
You won't. Really, the only things I recommend, I like keeping. Most people, especially that live in a cold climate, will have vitamin D issues, and that you want strong bones, so you want your vitamin D in a good range. If the doctor sees that your thyroid's out of range, you want that in range also. But other than that, I don't really recommend a multivitamin. I don't recommend very many things. The only things I'll recommend is if your blood sugar's out of control, we can treat it with berberine or metformin if the doctor wants. But berberine seems to be just as effective, at least in my experience. And then if you have very, very, very mild kidney issues and it's not in like certain stages of renal failure, that we can maximize kidney health with astragalus. But those are really about the only things I recommend.
My creatinine was like 1.17.
That's really good. It's hard to get
18 or something.
You're
like
never
that.
Gonna. BUN is actually probably not really valuable for bodybuilding. BUN's and actually blood urea nitrogen, and that's measuring how much protein's in the blood actually. And so that's a measurement actually to see whether you're catabolic or anabolic. And if you have low BUN, it technically means you're anabolic. The problem is it doesn't really correlate well with strength athletes because we tend to eat so much protein, we're never going to have a BUN, even when we are anabolic. So what we need to worry about is creatinine. And our creatinine is always going to be higher because creatinine is a byproduct of muscle breakdown. And we have much more muscle, and we're breaking down much more muscle from training. So it's very difficult. 1.17 is actually pretty low for a large muscular athlete. It's hard to get it under 1.1, but that's the most important thing. You really want to keep that under 1.2 or 1.3 if possible, because if that starts creeping up, your GFR is going to start decreasing, and that's the filtration rate of your kidneys, and that's really what you need to pay attention to. The GFR is not an accurate measurement if you have a lot of muscle mass, but it's the only measurement they have. So if that starts decreasing and it gets to a range where it's not in a normal range, they can do something called a 24-hour clearance test to see your true filtration rate, but you never want to get to that level. You want to just keep your GFR in a normal range, even if it's not accurate for a large muscular person.
That's interesting. Now, what do you think about, like, okay, glucose? I've hit 69 before fasted glucose. Like, sometimes I'd wake up in the morning and my legs would literally like be giving out, and I feel like shaky, and I could barely walk and stuff, and I feel like my glucose levels get so low sometimes that does my body process insulin like extremely well?
Yeah, it sounds like the way your diet is and your way your metabolism, that's going to be. You don't want high glucose. I worry less about fasted glucose and more about A1C, which is kind of like your overall what your blood sugar is doing all the time. If you have a lot of high fasted readings, I would recommend getting your A1C checked. Doesn't sound like you have that issue at all. But fasted's kind of the problem is when you do a fasted reading and you're like if you're doing it yourself and you're testing with your finger, you've been laying in bed all day. You could have you haven't all night. You haven't moved very much. There could be localized spots of elevated blood sugar. You know, because if I haven't moved this arm in 4 hours, maybe a tiny bit more blood sugar has pooled in my finger than normal, and then I'll offset the reading because that reading is very sensitive. Because a reading of 100 milligrams per deciliter for someone with 5 liters of blood in their body, that means there's only 5 grams of sugar in the whole body. That's it. 5 grams of sugar in the blood. And so if you go from 100 and bring that down to like 80, that's only a difference of like 1 gram of sugar. So the difference between 80 and even 70 is like less than 1.5 grams of sugar. And so it's really susceptible to like minor variations. So you really want to check A1C for long-term stuff. It doesn't sound like that's going to be an issue to you. I mean, people who are naturally ectomorphic and naturally thin and have high metabolisms rarely have issues with blood sugar.
And then hematocrit, like I've never gotten it above 51, but usually I'm about 48 and a half. I feel like that's pretty much optimal range because you don't want hematocrit to be too low either.
No, definitely not. You don't. I mean, really, for performance, you want it high, but high is going to shorten your lifespan because it's going to raise your blood sugar, increase or blood pressure, increase your risk of clots. So that's perfect. If you can keep, if yours is in a normal range and you don't have to give blood to keep it there, that's awesome.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I'm trying to think. You're good. Go ahead.
So basically, I just want to not lose the listeners because you guys are nerding out too much here.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's good, but I feel like not everyone's going to be able to track with both you guys. I want to know, Justin, like, what are you doing, bro? Because you're straight looking full blown like Kevin Levrone, bro. I've been watching your videos, and I mean, you're really strong right now. I mean, you're rowing 400 pounds like it's a freaking feather.
Yeah, I don't know.
Huge.
I just kind of got like reinvigorated working with Ben, and like kind of found my roots again. I never felt like a bodybuilder. I never felt like a powerlifter. I was always in between. I loved lifting heavy, but I liked to compete in bodybuilding. I mean, I did both, but I was never 100% one way or the other. And it's like finding someone. And Ben's actually moved from Virginia into Michigan near me, and so we can train fairly often together. And it just kind of like reignited my feeling about training. I'm enjoying it like I haven't since like 2006 or 2007. So it's for a long time. I didn't really have any plans in competing, and I was kind of just lost and going through the motions. And you know, like once training gets in your blood, you can't just leave it. You know, I can't. Even if I don't want to train and I'm tired, if I take too many days off, I just start getting depressed. And conversely, no matter how terrible I feel, if I go and get a workout in, I'm leaving the gym feeling great. And so I always had to train, but I just didn't have I was just kind of like, I don't know, just not focused or kind of lost. And that's kind of been reinvigorated the last year or so. So that's really what it is. I don't really have any plans to do anything. I'm just having like the kind of fun training that I haven't had since I was like 25, where I'm just like before like a back day where I can't sleep, I'm all excited.
Now I know you've benched 405 for like 12 before.
Yeah.
Did you just do that by just like doing hella reps? Like, I mean, like, because you don't program for strength or anything, right?
No. What I do is I call it power building, and we have that on my website, Myoplasmic. We have programs in this style. Basically, what I did, I mean, the real loose structure of it is I go in my first movement, my main movement, I basically just try to get stronger every week. But I do it in like a bodybuilding rep range, you know? So it'd be whatever it was squats, I would just try to lift more. And then after that main movement, then I went and I was just a straight bodybuilder, where I do lots of sets, lots of volume, go for a pump. But that first movement, and I didn't really have any reason for that. It wasn't like power building wasn't really a term 15 years ago. But it was just, that's what I love to train, and it let me compete as a bodybuilder and get strong in the process. Looking back, I wish I would have spent a little bit of time focusing on actual pure strength, because I didn't really know my proclivity to strength until I started, like, actually the first time I had any idea was I went and trained at Detroit Barbell with Tim Hensley, and then that's where I met Matt Krozaleski and Clay Brandenburg were there and stuff. And I didn't even know about like the suits, because I think I doubled like a, I don't know, like a 750 or something there, you know, and they were all geeked up, but I was like all confused because Matt had just squatted 1,000 pounds. Well, I didn't know they were wearing suits, you know, but that's kind of like when I learned I had like, I probably should have, if I would have went through my natural path for success, it would have probably been powerlifting instead of bodybuilding. Strength just kind of, and my strength is nothing compared to the top powerlifters, but the strength I got was really just kind of happenstance from just lifting heavy. It was never programmed into it.
You squatted what, like 500 for like 18 or something like that?
Yeah, I did.
Damn, dude.
I think I did 765 raw, but that was the most I ever tried raw. I did. Yeah, I don't remember all of them, but for a long time I wanted to do 500 for 20. I had the strength, I just didn't have the lungs for it. So you get to about rep 16 and you're just so out of breath and you think you're going to pause, you know. Well, you're just standing there with 500 pounds on your back gets you out of breath. So there's like no recovery. So it's basically you just go as fast as you can I never quite got to 20.
Did you get 19 or it was like 19?
I think 18. I think it's on video on YouTube.
Yeah.
I probably did that like 5 times. Me and Steve Kukla, we'd always try to do it. My best lifts, I think, I hate saying my best lifts with like power lifters because they're not like power lifter level.
765 is a good squat.
Thank you. I think I did 924 in the meet, but that was triple fly. And my best bench in a shirt was 725. My best raw bench, I did 495 for 4 off a 2 board, and I did 455 with red minis for 2, I think, which I'm sure was over 500. I think at the top for 2. Yeah, and then 405 for 12. You know, that was kind of a standard workout. I think I could do 3 sets of 12 with it, and then 315 I did 30 a couple times. But
yeah, 315 for 30. That I remember the first time I saw that I was like, what the hell is this? This is
well, that was kind of because I learned that was like early days of YouTube, and I learned you could get like a lot more exposure by doing a lift that would cause a lot of controversy. So I did 315 for reps and 225 for reps and just bounced them and never locked them out. Because I knew the comments, people would be so pissed off that I wasn't locking them out that it would get like 10 times more views than it worked. So.
See, that's how I like found out about you, because we were both in the early days of YouTube. Like we were back in 2010 when there was like no one on there.
Yeah.
And that's like the first time I kind of started seeing you guys. So that's funny.
You know, that's how I
mean, we're talking, guys, there was no one on there. Like this, YouTube had just started, and like there was no content as far as like lifting.
A bunch of like 240p videos that you could hardly see, and
yeah, it was crazy. Good times, man. I miss those days.
Yeah.
Well, how old did you turn today?
41.
Okay. It's cool what you said though about like enjoying training again, because I've talked with Scott, and you know, I'm kind of at the same point. Like there's times where I get burned out with it and like competing in social media.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying it now, and I'm not posting as much on social media, kind of flying under the radar more, and just want to take people by surprise. So
yeah.
that's,
for me, I think it's hard when it becomes like a job, when you earn money off your training, because then it's no longer the thing you do to break from reality. It's you have to do it and have to do it a certain way to make money, and that's when it really, for me, that's when it kind of sucked the fun out of it. And so for a lot of years,
sponsors make it tough.
Yeah. So but I'm enjoying it now. So hopefully it stays that way.
See, that's how it is for me, because I train people as far as like literally training how to get stronger, because I 100% know programming like the back of my hand, but the nutrition part, no freaking clue. So but I do make a living off it, so it's like I have to always be trying to like get somewhere. But now without like having all the sponsor pressure, like a major sponsor, I do have a couple smaller sponsors, but not like Animal or anything. It's almost like it feels like it's a weight off your shoulders, because I can just enjoy it. I don't have to be putting videos up every day. It's like I can.
Well, it's amazing how much the fun gets sucked out of. It's like I could be on Facebook and Instagram and stuff all day, every day until I have a sponsor and I have to be on there, and then suddenly it's no longer the thing I go to enjoy.
Yes.
It's like a job, and that's what always sucked the fun out of it for me. So
that's how it was for me, but it's almost fun too, because like now you're almost like kind of in the background and people aren't watching as much, so it's like you want to take people by surprise. It gives you that motivation. Like, all right, I'm going to come back out and show you guys, you know. So that's exciting. Have you worked with any other power lifters besides Ben Pollock?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, Dave Tate. How many have I worked with? Well, a lot that might not be really big names. What's that?
You worked with Chris Duffin, right? Before?
Yeah, but really not for powerlifting. When he did the cover for his book, I peaked him for that. So he did his own diet and everything. I just kind of did the final week manipulation stuff.
Oh, Ben Pollock's your main guy? All right.
Yeah. And I mean, I've worked with like 100 powerlifters over the years. Well, Tim Hensley, I worked a little bit, like 2008-ish. He's a big bench guy. God, I feel terrible because some of the guys I worked with are gonna like.
Well, he might work.
It's all good.
A lot of the lead FTS guys.
With Julius here pretty soon.
What's that?
You're working with Julius Maddox, right?
Yeah. I just just contacted Julius, and so he's because he's gonna try 800 at my gym, and so we're gonna talk after that because he wants to get his diet together because he wants to go back to three lift meets, and he like at his current size, it's just not conducive to a good deadlift and stuff. So.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we're all gonna have our work cut out for us here, but I'm scared, terrified.
Hey, did you know, Justin, that because Julius told me this, he's gonna do a bench press. I don't think it's gonna be the 800. It's gonna be like afterwards. He's gonna do some reps. Like he's gonna do a bench press with a bar that like Tesla made. That's gonna have like lightning bolts in it.
Oh, badass!
It's gonna be sick. He said it's gonna be like the biggest spectacle ever in powerlifting. Is gonna be that event.
He's just I don't understand any of powerlifting anymore. The numbers used to make sense, but they just don't anymore. Everyone is so strong. The lower weight class guys are just impossibly strong. What's that Jamal guy?
Jamal Browner.
Oh my God! Like his deadlift, doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't even look. It looks like he's lifting an empty bar no matter what he's got on there. Julius put in 800 pounds. I mean, any of the guys of the last 10 years just are mind-boggling to me.
As far as like getting back into like you talked about tendon strength with sodium loading and like water loading and all that to drive water into the joints, is there anything you can do to like strengthen the tendons, or is that along the same lines?
Not really. The heavy loads over time will do it, but there's really not much you can do. I mean, the tendon strength is kind of correlated to muscular strength, and they kind of increase it, but there really isn't much. I mean, like not really with supplements or anything, and a lot of it is just genetics. You know, are you someone with really thick joints? You're probably going to have a larger tendon mass or tendon area. You know, if the tendon's intersecting at a real tiny joint, there's only so wide the tendon can be. If you're really heavy joints, like I have really big wrists, and so these tendons are going to just have much more space to connect to the bone, to the muscle than someone with narrow wrists. I think that's really the biggest thing. It's kind of, there's not much you can do for it other than that.
What about things like BPC and TB500?
Man, I hate to say, my personal experience has been not anything phenomenal, but I've had too many clients claim incredible success with them to deny them. I've never personally noticed, and I've tried 4 or 5, well, I mean, probably 2 or 3 different companies, maybe 4 different companies, and they just never seem to be a huge difference maker for me. But I don't want to say that because I have way too many clients who swear that they were life changers for them. So.
And then what about?
Go ahead.
No, what about like people say, okay, well, Tren will dry you out, you'll tear muscles. The DECA will lubricate the joints, you're less likely to. Like, is that true?
Somewhat. I mean, yeah. I mean, and everyone responds differently because if you're someone who sweats like crazy on Tren and feel like you get really hot, you're going to be more likely to be dehydrated. But it's not that stuff. I mean, they're all the same molecules. You know, they have the steroid molecule is basically 6-6-6-5 carbon chain, and then that's all of them. There's a 6 carbon chain, a 6 carbon chain, a 6 carbon chain, and a 5 carbon chain. And then after that, it's just a hydroxyl group here, an oxygen here. That's the only difference between any of them. So they're really not that dramatically different. Now, the effects they cause in the body, like if you sweat really hard and you're more likely to lose electrolytes, or if it's something that like a DECA that causes because those are 19 NOR compounds, so they can cause an increase in prolactin, which can increase water retention, or like a test is going to cause, or a D-ball is going to cause a D-ball would be like a methyl estrogen. A testosterone is going to increase estrogen, and those things will hold water in the body. And so it's really the secondary effects of the difference in the molecules. It's not necessarily like if you take Tren and don't get dehydrated, you're not going to have those dehydration issues. So it's really, you can mitigate them if you're smart about what your nutrition and supplements.
Yeah, because like Tren, I never got dehydrated, but I get ridiculously strong, and then I got like really angry on it. And then like, whereas like Anadrol, I can take Anadrol, I get nothing from it. I swear I don't get strong at all. But if I take Anavar, I get crazy strength.
Yeah,
like Anavar, crazy gains, and
well, that's why when people think there's like a secret cycle, that's why I say there isn't, because there just isn't. Everyone responds differently. There's certain generalizations you can say, you know, like up to a certain point, the benefits stop coming in, but everyone's got to find what works for them. And what works for them is usually, it's much more general for muscle growth, meaning you can say certain things will almost always work for everyone for muscle growth, but for strength, it seems to be really, really independent. And each person responds very differently strength-wise to different compounds, at least in my experience.
100%, mine too. I did take Halo once, and even on like, I was taking 1,200 milligrams of Tudka, and I would take the Halo, and like 30 minutes, an hour later, I felt like I was gonna like throw up. And once I added in NAC, I felt great, but like Tudka alone, I felt like garbage, and I felt like my liver was getting smoked.
Yeah, it probably was. Yeah, and that's another thing too, and that's the difference between strength and size. Because if you're doing that and you can't eat and your stomach's upset, you're not going to be able to eat enough to add size. But that doesn't mean you're not going to have the high androgens and that aggression to be strong. And so that's why people get like confused. They're like, supplementing for size is really an entirely different beast than supplementing for strength. And I think for powerlifting, what you want to do, and I hate to even give this advice because I'm not a powerlifter, but I've had good success with powerlifters doing this. I think most of your training year, you want to treat your supplements almost as a bodybuilder and try to maximize the increased size and myofibril growth, increase the size of protein structures. And so that would be like a bodybuilding cycle. And then when you're in meat prep, it completely changes and you're going straight for strength cycle. But I don't think you really want to emphasize the strength cycles in the off season, because those aren't necessary. It's great to put up big numbers in the gym, but what's going to allow you to put up the maximal numbers for your body is how dense the protein structures of your muscles are. And if you don't spend time increasing that density, you're limited. It's basically like, you know, if I want to tow something really heavy, I can maximize the amount I can tow with this chain. But if I add 2 chains, I can tow a lot more. I would rather add the number of chains and then in meat prep focus on making sure those chains are as strong as possible, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes sense. It's interesting. All right, man. So here's one other question I feel like people are gonna have. If you PCT and come off completely, do your receptors reset? Is that a thing? Is that a myth? Do your receptors down-regulate after using gear for a long period of time?
I think people kind of mistake the number of receptors in the body. There's a lot of cells in the body, and they all have receptors, and I don't believe they get down-regulated, and I don't think there's any evidence for that. I think what happens is there's different effects. I think the side effects of blasting things long-term, especially things like GH and stuff, cause secondary effects that change your response. What I'll basically try to define it as is that there's like really high water retention type things will cause almost like a compartment syndrome type issue. And if you ever heard of compartment syndrome where there's so much pressure around like a calf muscle or something, well, I think that same thing happens as a side effect of like GH and high water retention things. And it causes so much compression around the nerves as they come out of the spine that over long-term periods of time, it actually affects the way those nerves innervate in the muscle. And so if you look at like a long-term bodybuilders, as they get older, they start getting like a turnip leg look, and they start losing their tricep size, and like weird atrophies like that. And I think that's the issue. It's not the receptor down regulation. It's that so much compression from blasting full time, the compression on the nerve is starting to affect the nerve structures as they innervate deep into the muscle, and those start dying off. And the way that shows is, and I'll stick with bodybuilding because that's what I know about the powerlifting. I'm sure the same kind of correlation happens with strength, because if those nerves aren't innervating the muscle, they can't contract the muscle. But what happens with bodybuilders long term, where they never take breaks, is they lose their outer quad sweep, they lose their tricep size, and they lose their lower quad size, and kind of their adductors really get enlarged. And what that means is, I think the compression of the nerves as they come out of the spine, those nerves that innervate the outer quads start kind of dying off, and you lose the ability to contract those muscles properly. And so, for bodybuilding, that correlates to a change in size and structure. For powerlifting, I would have to assume that the same thing happens. If those muscles aren't getting nerve function, they're not able to fire, and you're going to lose strength the same way. I think that's what's going on. I don't think it's necessarily a downregulation of the receptors, because I don't believe that there really is a downregulation.
Very interesting. Is there any way to increase the amount of androgen receptors?
No. What you really want to increase is you want to lower the SHBG. I don't think there's really a synergistic effect. I don't think growth hormone increases androgen.
Hold up.
I say this as that I consider myself a nutritionist first. I don't consider the supplements never really interested me that much. I think you find what works for you, and there's only like 15 different things total to try. And I think by year 5 of training, most people have figured out what works for them. And at that point, you just try to maximize what works for you with diet and training. So I've never been a huge supplement guy, because I think it just never interested me that much, because partly because early on in the internet, it seemed like everyone who was obsessed with finding all the perfect cycles of perfect supplements never really amounted to much. And the guys who just found, okay, I like this compound, this compound, this compound, let me get, as big and strong as possible on this compound. Those are the guys who seem to progress. And so kind of as a secondary effect, it just made me not really super interested in them. I mean, from a science standpoint, I can say what I think's going on with things, but it's not my primary line of interest.
It's actually interesting, though, that you brought up SHBG. My SHBG on this last blood work sample was 13.1. So the reference range was 16.5 to 55.9 is the normal range.
Mm-hmm.
I was at 13.1.
That's probably another part of your genetics and your low blood sugar, because high insulin lowers SHBG, and active insulin, and so and that can actually be one of the ways they can kind of check for prediabetes is low SHBG. because this is different from you. This is the effect of having so much insulin for so many years that it's actually lower SHBG. But that's really for you. That's a good sign of your genetics, basically.
And then one other thing. So this was the other caveat I should put to this. This was 48 hours after injection. This 125 milligrams. The free
that should actually increase SHBG.
Yeah, so 48 hours after injection, I got this blood work fasted in the morning. 125. Free testosterone was 5.2 on a scale of 33 to 227. Doctor literally said it was the highest he'd ever seen.
The highest, you broke up. The highest what?
That the doctor said it was the highest free test he's ever seen.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it. That's a crazy low SHBG.
So
that's a sign of like good genetics. I mean, that's impressive.
And then the total testosterone was 1493. So
that's good too, because 10 times the milligram that you take is a pretty high level.
So that was 48 hours after injection of 125 half a cc, which is what I'm running per week now. But I'm excited because I've kind of told you what you got to work with, and I'm excited to see what we can do here. But that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
I'm scared, but I'm excited.
So me and Pete have talked about this a lot, Justin, and I actually talked to you about this before, and it was like, I don't know, like you make sense of things like better than anybody, I feel like, and you explained to me like why people use performance enhancing drugs. I don't know if you could just like wrap that off the top of your head, but like could you explain to people like in sports and stuff, because a lot of people, me and Pete talk about this, like people think the guys in the NFL are natural,
Yeah.
It's okay.
Well, the thing is, I think I kind of remember the way I explained it. I don't think I'll be able to do it again as well, but I can't think of his name, but there's a guy who interviews, and he seems, you remember the old Chris Farley sketch when he was the interviewer guy who was really awkward? I don't know if you guys remember that, but this is the way the guy interviews. I wish I could think of his name, but every time he interviews like a elite athlete, and they tell these stories about how crazy they were, or like they talk about like half the team getting wasted the night before the Super Bowl, and this guy's always amazed, like dumbfounded that these guys would act that way. And it blows my mind because he doesn't realize the type of extreme individual who becomes an elite at that level. The type of person who becomes at that extreme level isn't like, you almost have to be, anyone's had alcohol and they kind of lose that frontal lobe, and what happens is it's not that they don't realize the consequences. They understand the consequences. They just don't care anymore. And that's the type of person who becomes an elite athlete. They're just reckless and wild because you don't become better than everyone else in the world by being cautious. And so just by default, the type of person who's going to be at that elite level is not cautious, and when I say only cares about winning, it's not even a thought. It's just inherent to them that I'm here. If I do this, I'll win. It's not even like they don't weigh anything. It's a clear thing. This gets me to win. I mean, if you guys watched the Last Dance documentary with Michael Jordan,
I didn't see it, but people have been talking about it.
The guy's a winner. It doesn't matter. He's going to win. It's not like he's going to debate anything. If this means win and this means not win, there's no should I? Is there health? It's this win, and that's just the way it is. And it blows my mind, like when these interviewers and stuff outside of sports don't quite understand that. But it's the same thing with anything. You don't become a high-level politician unless you're ready to lie, step on your mother, kill your dog to win an election. And it's not like those people debate anything. It's just ingrained. It's inherent to them. The same thing with an elite athlete. No one goes in. You don't walk up to a deadlift bar thinking, I don't want to have a bad back when I'm older. But people do think that. Like Joe Sixpack goes to the gym and he's worried about that.
Yeah.
He's worried, am I going to hurt something? And that's the same thing with supplements. That's just the way it is. If you're someone who goes with supplements, you need to be smart about them. But if that's your number one go-to, you probably don't have this to become a world champion. And
Wow.
And I wish I could think of this interviewer's name because it cracks me up. Sometimes on a long drive, I'll just listen to a bunch because it'll be like talking to Joe Theismann, and Joe Theismann will be talking about partying the night before the Super Bowl. And he's like, really? before the suit, and George Joe's like, he's just, like he's a Hall of Fame football player. He wakes up, goes extreme until he falls asleep, and then wakes up the next morning and then lives life extreme until it's the same thing why like high level athletes tend to like hard partiers, or why like a Dennis Rodman can go, he goes and wins the playoff game, immediately hops on a private jet to Vegas, parties all night in Vegas until he takes that private jet back for the next game with no sleep or anything. And like someone who's an accountant is going to look in there and be like, that's not optimal for performance. Where like an animal or like an elite person who's just the extreme of extremes who becomes the best in the world, their body just doesn't work that way. There's no like, there's no paralysis by analysis. That's I guess the best way I can say it. And that's why most bodybuilders fail, most powerlifters fail, is they get so paralyzed by overanalyzing things that they don't let themselves make progress. Where someone like who becomes a world record holder, they don't go, am I going to be strong today? I didn't get the proper amount of sleep. My diet wasn't whatever. They go in and whatever's on the bar, they just find a way to get fired up and they lift it. And it's just there. And either you're born with it or you're not. But if you are born with it, you don't analyze little things like that. You just go and do. It's I need to do this to win. That's what I'm doing. There's no other thought in it.
See, that's one of the more interesting perspectives I've heard because it's 100% accurate. You think these NFL players are like scared of head injuries?
No. They don't even think
they're running into each other, lowering their heads at 100 miles an hour. Like they don't care.
No, and then I'm sure. No, and then they go home and they do coke off a stripper, murder someone, stay up all night, and then go hit the gym and then
honestly see. And that's the reason I could never be a great football player. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, man, I'm gonna get a concussion, mess my head up, I could break my neck. I don't know about this, but it's like these guys.
But conversely, how much do you worry about tweaking your back with deadlifting, or do you just go up and get your head right and just pull just lift the weight?
Yeah, it's not a thought at all.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's how it is, because not everyone is that way. Some people think, oh, I don't want to tear my bicep, or there's just like, but if you're going to be the elite at something, it's just there's only one thought direction, and it's whatever's going to get me moving faster in that direction.
That's a great perspective. That puts it all. It makes so much sense with anything. Like these guys who the guy Alex Hosmel or whatever free climbed El Capitan.
Yeah.
Like what the he's. I mean,
and I could never do that because ridiculous. At every point I would be stressing, or I would think, what happens if I fall? Where that's just not. It's not like he shuts out those thoughts. He doesn't have those thoughts.
He said they did a thing they said his pituitary gland wasn't firing normally, like a normal person, so he could just shut it. And he said he's like, I don't have emotion like that. I just I'm not scared. It's just whatever. And it's that's so freaking mind blowing.
Yeah, and so if you look at it, there's like the Bell distribution of humans. You don't get to this tail end of the distribution without being different than all those people in the middle. And the difference is that those guys that analyze and stress and worry, whatever you're gonna excel at, for you, it's powerlifting. Like you said, with football, you would be thinking about head injuries. When you go up to a deadlift bar, you're not thinking about anything other than getting that weight off the floor. I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. All right. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, if anybody wants to make sense of anything in this world, just contact Justin. He makes it like I remember when you told me that originally, and my mind was so blown away. I was like, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Well, you can use it as a metric, because when someone contacts you and their first thing is like a worry or a concern, you understand it because but you also know that they're not going to be the top end of whatever they're trying to achieve, because if you're going to be the best of the best, you only have one train of thought. It's one track. There's no backwards worry. There's only forward.
Man, that's deep. Makes perfect sense. Unreal. All right. Did you have any more questions, Scott? I don't want to hold him too long on his birthday here.
So he is all about UFOs, man. And I'm interested. What do you think about that? I mean, I don't know if you're into that kind of stuff. I don't know what your interests are outside of bodybuilding and power.
Well,
you gotta tell him though. I did see a UFO about 5 years ago. 100%. 100%.
Well,
So
here's my thought. Where are they coming from? And I'll say, we could not be a UFO for other planets right now. And our current understanding of physics means we couldn't be a UFO for other planets right now, because the nearest star from us is 8 light years away, which means even if we could travel at the speed of light, which anything with mass cannot do, it would take 8 years to fly there. And not only that, because of time dilation, because if I'm traveling at the speed of light and I leave and come back, by the time I get to Earth, the 16 years it would take for me would be like hundreds of years to Earth people because of time dilation.
Gosh.
So that's my problem. Is if not saying there's not UFOs, because there's like 400 million stars in our galaxy, and there's as many as 1 trillion galaxies in the known universe, which may be only a fraction of the full universe. We don't know. So it's almost, I mean, it's really impossible that there isn't intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. There's more stars in our galaxy than there are grains of sand on Earth. Imagine go to a beach and count the grains of sand. There's more stars in our galaxy, and there's more galaxies than there are stars in our galaxy. So the massive number is something our brains can't even comprehend. Absolutely cannot comprehend. But the problem is our understanding of physics, if it is correct, which means that anything with mass can't travel at the faster than the speed of light, or can't even travel at the speed of light, and that holds every single scientific breakthrough ever. Every technology we have follows the laws of physics as we understand it. According to those laws, we could never become a UFO to another planet, because the time issue is that, like, the nearest galaxy is 4 million light years away. So even if we could travel at the speed of light, it would take 1 million years to get there. Dude. Humans have only been here for 100,000 years. That's my problem. It's not that there's no technology elsewhere in the universe that creates flying objects. It's that there's either laws of physics we don't understand, which would be fairly difficult to accept, because we have a pretty successful world right now using the laws of physics as we understand it. And and so that's my issue. I don't deny that there's life in the universe that has the capability of flying.
See, what you just said reminds me of Interstellar, the movie,
yeah.
Where they're traveling back and like, holy crap, we just lost 30 years or whatever, because
that's all true. That they consulted with physicists for that movie to make sure they were violating laws of physics.
Scott, have you seen that movie?
What is it called?
Interstellar. It's like a 2-hour movie. It's maybe 3 hours. 3-hour movie.
But like when Matthew McConaughey comes back and he's younger than his daughter, that's what really would happen. And that
is.
And that's not a guess, because if you put a atomic clock on an airplane and leave another atomic clock at an airport, when that airplane gets back, that clock is slower than the clock at the airport. So I'm
not this smart for this conversation. This guy.
And actually, our GPS
uses
that also. If we only use Newtonian mechanics for GPS, if we didn't use relativistic corrections, meaning like all the time dilation stuff, your GPS wouldn't work. It would take you to the wrong spot because the satellites are so far away. So that's my only problem with UFOs is, if they're coming from other planets, those planets are so far away that they understand physics so much beyond what we understand that we couldn't even talk to them.
Okay. Two things.
Good.
You got to see this movie for real. It's one of the best movies, mind-blowing.
It's a good movie.
Interstellar, Matthew McConaughey. Second thing, I don't know. I saw something freaking weird. I don't know what the hell it was. I still wonder. It freaked me out. I'm like, I've never seen anything that's just hovering there. That's a triangular craft with a light in each corner. So
remember the stealth bomber. That's like late 1950s technology. So don't forget also. You imagine where the current technology. We don't really know where it is because it's all classified military stuff. And if you know those UFO things they released like just a couple weeks ago. Did you see that stuff?
Yeah.
And so I think it's very likely that those are American military planes, that they released that basically to show other countries, here's a hint at where we're really at with flight technology.
See, that makes sense, because this thing was hovering so freaking low, like relative to like where a plane would be, and this thing was just hovering there, and then it just goes and flies off like nothing over the interstate, and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, this is at night. I'm like, is anyone else seeing this? Like, I'm literally like losing my mind.
Yeah, well, I
craziest
mean,
thing I've ever seen.
so many people have seen things, and they follow real similar patterns. I mean, for a long time, it was like disc-shaped objects, and then
This was a triangle.
yeah, well, that's like a newer thing. There's a lot of triangular shape with lights at each of the
Yep,
corners.
lights each corner.
Yeah, and that's a really common one. So I think it's probably very likely that it's like high classified military technology. That's probably more likely. Not that there aren't even crazier technologies elsewhere in the universe. It's just that unless we don't understand physics as well as we will eventually, we with our current understanding that, and meaning everything we know and anything that's ever happened doesn't violate the laws as we understand them. So whatever we understand the laws, whether how complete they are, nothing we've ever seen has been able to violate them. So either there are things that we don't know yet that other life forms have been able to violate, or those are like classified military flight things.
So basically, the president only knows this kind of stuff. They get briefed on it.
Not even. That's the thing.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
who knows? I mean, who knows what he gets? What even? I can only imagine like the really, really high-end military stuff, like the, because I imagine at that level, even like the research scientists, you don't work on a plane. Like if I'm a research scientist, I might work on finding a polymer a really, really heat-resistant polymer. And I might know it's for some kind of military application, or I might work on some new kind of fuel delivery system for some kind of jet, engine. And so you don't work, like I don't sit down and design a plane. I work on a really, really tiny. So I think even the people working on it probably don't know very much. And so I would think it's very likely that it's so classified that even the president probably has a loose understanding of the whole project. I don't know. That's just my.
Holy crap.
That seems more likely. I don't think it's very likely that there's UFOs, that there are other intelligent life forms elsewhere in the universe that have technology that could be far superior than ours. But I think the things that you'd see on Earth, either those are violating the laws of physics and able to travel through time, which would be pretty scary because they could, if they have that technology, then that'd be like us. You can imagine us observing ants, and ants kind of vaguely understanding that some is looking at them, but they can never recreate what we have. If things are flying from other galaxies and getting here in a timeline that doesn't take millions of years, it doesn't cause all that interstellar time issues, then they're so advanced that it's basically like them looking at us as ants.
Oh my gosh. Well, that just blew everyone's mind.
Yeah. Seriously. Is time even real, or is it?
I don't. You guys are.
Well, I have my master's degree is in physics, so I have a physics degree, but I'm very, very, like the high-end extreme physics. There's only like a handful of people on Earth who really work in that, but there is evidence. There are particles who appear to travel backwards in time.
Okay, I just heard about there could be a parallel universe where time travels backwards.
Yeah, well, if you talk like the many worlds theory of quantum physics, quantum mechanics is so. Like a quantum particle is a wave function. It's not a particle. And when you actually solve quantum problems, you solve it as a wave. And so, like, you picture a wave on the ocean. Where is the wave? You can't say a wave is at a point because it's spread out as a wave. And that's what happens. But when you solve a quantum mechanics equation, what happens is you get a point. And that is a solution of the equation. And there's quantized characteristic points that it can even be. And that's where quantum comes from. A quantum state can only have certain energies. It can't have any energy. It can only have quantized states of energy. And so the many worlds interpretation is like when an electron, one of the characteristics of an electron is it has spin, and they call it spin up and spin down. And if I pass an electron through like a magnetic thing, like a horizontal magnetic, it'll always cause, I think, spin up. But then, so I know once I observe it, I know that electron had spin up. But before I observed it, it had to have spin up and spin down as possible solutions. But even worse, now that I know it's spin up, if I send it through a vertical magnetic field, it can come out of that spin up or spin down, even though I knew before it was spin up. And so what that means, the many worlds interpretation means it always has spin up and spin down. It's that when I observe it, I am part of the universe where all those quantized states were spin up, and my quantized states were all such that they observed it that spin up. But there's a different world where it was spin down also.
Oh my god!
And they think that can basically happen with time also, where we just happen to be all these, so like everything we've talked about, like every question there's yes or no, there's both. We just happen to be experienced the one where each thing happened the way. And so it basically, there's some evidence that the time would be the same thing, that there's constantly time moving forward and time moving backwards. We're not in that world where time is moving backwards.
Oh my gosh, that's almost freaky to think about.
Oh man, well, like that, like if you sit down and really think about that, every single thing. So like the time you asked a girl out in high school, you also didn't ask her out. But that happens for every cell, every electron, everything in your body, and we just happen to, at any time, everything that's happening, all those electrons spin up or spin down. There's one state of us where all those states are in whatever they are right now, and that's what we experience. But all those other ones happen also, and there might be us in a parallel universe that understands all those things, and there's you somewhere in a parallel universe where you did ask the girl out or didn't ask her out. There's a you that got in a car accident and didn't get a car accident, made the game-winning free throw that didn't make it. And so we just happen to be we only know of this one that we're also in. But there's according to that, there's no law that says there isn't an infinite number of us that experience all those other things also. And they think they might be having the same discussion. Only they're asking if there's a world where time moves forward.
Okay, what the heck is deja vu then? Where you're like, okay, I've totally felt that before.
Man, yeah, I have no idea, but that's, I don't know. I think, because remember what our brains are, they're just electrical signals. And so like, if you picture a dog, you can picture a dog in your head, but there's no signal for dog. It's just some combination of electrical signals so every time I've seen a dog in all my life, there's been all these electrical signals going through my brain, and some combination of them formed to kind of be my recollection of a dog. And so, I mean, you know what I mean? So so deja vu is very likely that there's just some of our 500 trillion neurons in our brain, some combination of them was close enough to another combination that happened before that we think it's the same thing.
Oh my gosh. Holy crap.
I've been talking to George Lehman a lot lately. And George, he believes that we live in a simulation. He believes we live in a simulation, and he thinks that like through this Neuralink thing that Elon Musk is creating, he thinks that what's going to happen is they're going to create like copies of us, so we'll exist like as a ghost of ourselves like eternally. And he's like, of course somebody is going to create a hell like in the Bible, and he's like, someone's going to create a hell, and there'll be a hell where you'll be sent to and you'll want to die and you'll never
Well, here's the argument. Here's the logical argument for simulation theory. Think of how far video games have gone in the last 20 years. Well, or how far computers have grown in the last 20 years. In the next 100 years, within the next 100 years, we'll be able to create like a sim city where the characters in the sim city don't know that they're a simulation. You agree with that, right? Within the next 100 years.
I can't even.
Well, okay, so the universe has been around for 15 billion years. What are the chances that of those 15 billion years, we just happen to live in the only 100-year span where that's ever happened? It's far more likely that it's happened many, many times, and we are the simulation of someone else's computer program. Logically, it's the chances of us being the only time that's ever happened in a 15 billion year universe is like winning the lotto 1,000,000 times in a row.
Wait, how many years? 15 what? 15 billion?
Yeah. And so to think that we just happen to live in the only 100-year period of that 15 billion years that there has ever been that technology is really slim. I mean, if I gave you, one in 150 million to 1 chances, would you think, oh yeah, that's clearly the winner? The 150 million to 1 chances it's not likely that that's the most logical thing. It's far more likely that that's happened many, many times.
So that wouldn't be when time started, right? That would just be the beginning of the universe.
That would be when the current state of basically the same thing with the electron up or down. One of the things that you could say is because what happens is there's all these weird fluctuations, and because for a very short period of time after the Big Bang, there was this hyperinflation where things moved faster than it should have been possible to move. And there's arguments that can happen as part of the many worlds thing, that happens periodically in different spots that we might not know is going on, creating new universes. So for our understanding of time in our current universe of the observable universe, 15 billion years ago, something happened that created what we understand now. I remember 15 billion years because time that's only for us. Things traveling faster or away from us or at different speeds than us or accelerating different rates experience time differently also. But either way, the chance that we're so lucky of this massive universe to be around for 15 billion years, that we exist in the only 100-year span where computer technology was powerful enough to create a simulation is pretty unlikely.
So all of this leads to the final question is, do you believe in God?
It's tough to say. My family's around, so.
Okay, yeah, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. I know
It's the story doesn't seem entirely proportional with everything we understand of the universe. I think that doesn't mean. I mean, where the Big Bang came from, who knows? It seems unlikely that it's the story of that book. I guess.
Do you think there's evidence, though? Like Albert Einstein said, the most incomprehensible thing about the universe was the comprehensibility of it. Is that evidence that there is like a higher intelligence, at least?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I mean, yeah, and that's another argument for simulation theory, actually, because the universe is governed by the language of mathematics, and mathematics is a computerized language. And so every single thing that's ever happened can be described and precisely and exactly by mathematical equations, which is the way a computer program would be written. There's no love, there's no emotion, there's no anything like that in the universe. It's all explained by very clear, precise mathematical equations, the exact same way a computer program would be written. So when we write a computer program, if I write it in C++, it's C++ using the, in my words, the English language with a system, with a logical mathematical approach that breaks it down to zeros and ones, which then the computer interprets. It's very, so you can make the same argument that our universe is done the same way, where the language is mathematics. And so, I mean, so that would lead to a more intelligent or a higher power that created that program. And it's it's very possible that that's God or whatever God would be defined as, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, does it look like it almost has to be something?
I mean, I don't even know when it's like this. We can't even like the whole grains of sand thing. How huge like the universe is. We can't. There's so many things that we just have no ability to comprehend, and there's so many things that we can solve without understanding the least. Like quantum mechanics is a prime example. No one understands quantum mechanics, but we can get answers so precise. It's like measuring the distance between Los Angeles and New York to within the half a length of a human hair. So I mean, incredibly precise answers for things we completely don't understand, just because we understand mathematics, and mathematics explains things that our brain can't understand. So I mean, it's just so far beyond the way our brains were. I mean, our brains were developed to understand protect a family, find food, pain hurts. It's just like they're so primitive where our brains really thrive at that. Those extreme things, I don't think we can really even understand. I think the most logical. If you look at things just purely, if you had no emotion, no want of anything to be, and you look at things the most logically, and if 15 billion years is how old the universe is, and we happen to have created or be able to create a computer program where the people in the program don't understand their simulation, it's very likely that we are the same thing. And if you say it's a God that did that, that's I mean, I don't have an argument with that.
Yeah.
Okay, Pete.
No, I mean, I believe in God, but I think one of the big takeaways here is just got to be nice to people, and that's the meaning of life and everything.
Yeah, no, that's the biggest thing. Is I think there's something very powerful about morals and
100%.
A moral life, and I don't think humans, whether we're a simulation or not a simulation, or created by God or created by some computer nerd, the society can only function properly, and your life is best lived and is most fulfilling when you live a moral life, that basically follows the morals of a religion.
Because I've had times where I'll be on like Trent or whatever, and I'm just single-minded, focused, and just like an asshole in the past. But now it's like you realize it's like that's not important to anybody but yourself. Like you gotta be good to people, rub off on people, be the person that creates change in others, kind of thing. And
well, that's the thing. I mean, I don't think people realize how powerful they are as a source of change, because you'll know 1,000 people in your life easy, especially with the internet. I mean, there's well more than 1,000 people who I've come into contact with, close enough where we've had impact on each other's life. Well, 1,000 times 1,000 is 1,000,000. And then another 1,000 is 1,000,000,000. So you're 2 steps away from changing the life of every person on earth. If you positively impacted if you are a positive impact to all those 1,000 people you know that you come in contact with your life, such so that they became a more positive influence on the 1,000 people they know, that right there you've impacted the entire world. Every person who's alive on earth. So I think it's not a step at all to think to think that when nihilism and stuff just doesn't make any sense to me, because it's just run the numbers and you can prove you're 2 steps away from affecting, good or bad, the entire planet.
And that's the thing. Us having this interview, me talking to you, could be an effect where I'm like, all right, let's team up, and then that could catapult me to new heights or something. That could be a huge breakthrough, a huge event, and we never would have had this, but it's like a chance occurrence where Scott came to me in the first place and is like, let's do these podcasts, and then here we are. And it's just crazy. It blows your mind.
Yeah. And the 1,000 people who watch this, if they come away and they wake up tomorrow morning more motivated and they think, you know what, I'm going after my goals or my dreams. And then all the 1,000 people they come in contact, that rubs off just a little bit on them. We've impacted 1 million people just by, one podcast. So we have a much bigger impact on the world than people think, I think.
Our personal record right now is 15,000 on a podcast, and we've been doing this, 2 months? So I'm hoping this one we can surpass that, because this is fascinating. But
it should. I mean, as long as I've listened to Justin, I've always been like, this is the guy that people need to listen to. But I almost don't think people are that smart, And I don't mean that to be rude, I'm sorry, people, but from my perspective, I think Justin's one of the smartest guys I've ever talked to in my entire life, easily. And it's interesting when you talk to someone who has a real understanding of science, who's legitimate, and on that subject we just talked about, it's so mysterious still. Like you said, you're like, well, it's a possibility. You're not gonna bullshit and say yes or no for sure. But it's we don't know so much still.
Oh man, yeah. We're not. I mean, apes have entered the Stone Age right now. They're using stone tools, and so we're basically just slightly more advanced apes. I mean, compared to the possibility of you mentioned Elon Musk. You listen to a guy like him talk, and you realize that's the upper end of human capability right now. And so you realize how much smarter than most people. I mean, we're really just for how big the universe is and how many possible things there are to, how far away we are from really understanding those is pretty dramatic.
It's interesting too, because Elon said that, the way his brain works, he can't shut it off. And it almost seems like it's not, I don't know how much he enjoys his life. I mean, I don't know, maybe he does, but he seems kind of tormented by.
You're talking about the Joe Rogan podcast where I know exactly what you're talking about. And you could see that. You're like, it's almost like a gift and a curse to be that brilliant because if you can't shut it off, I mean, I'm sure he envies the guy who, the guy, the grass is always greener type of thing. I'm sure the guy who comes home from his job that he hates and can just sit on the couch and drink a 6-pack and be blissfully happy watching a baseball game probably wishes he had Elon Musk's money. Where I'm sure, Elon would love to be able to just do that and shut this off at some point. But,
yeah,
that's the greatest fallacy in the world. The grass is greener principle.
Oh yeah.
It's by far, the more you actually think about it, you start to realize it's a complete fabrication in your mind. The grass is greener principle. It's something I've really thought about many times over the years, and I'm like, it's not. It's fake, man. You can't buy into that, because it's everything we have, someone else wants, and everything we want. So it's just, you can't win. You're just going to replace one thing with something else and have different sets of problems.
Yeah.
There's nobody has it perfect.
Exactly. I think, and the most important thing you can do, I think personally, is find a way to be as appreciative as possible of the grass you have, which I think most of us don't spend very much time focusing on.
All right, I think I saw Justin got the look right there. So that is
Holy
the cue
cow.
right there. And
You just start going.
I'm super grateful for both you guys. Like, thank you for doing this. And Justin, if you could just give how people, because you do coaching for nutrition and bodybuilding prep and stuff like that. If you could just give your information out, then we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, if you go to JaponaNutrition.com, which is a hard word to remember, it's probably the easiest thing is if you just Google Justin Harris Nutrition or Justin Harris Carb Cycling or Justin Harris Bodybuilding, it'll come up. But you can go, Japona Nutrition is my personal coaching business, and then myoplasmic.com is the membership site that I own with Ben Pollock.
All right, thank you guys, and happy birthday, Justin.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Thanks.
Scott.
Oh.
Hey, no, you can stop recording.
Okay.
Oh, guys, I've had the weirdest day over here. So my buddy Scott Davenport, known him for like 10 years. He goes out and writes a book. Now, I don't even know if Scott Davenport can read a book, but he decides he's going to go out and write a book. Write a book, allegedly. What's that mean? He got a few dollars saved up and he sent it to an editor? Okay, so he writes this book and he sends it to me and he asks me to, hey, man, can you help me get the word out? It's like, Scott, that's not really what I do. I don't really get the word out. Like, I have a different audience with my relationship. I mean, I would tell him, this is one of the worst books I've ever read. It's edited right. Most of the periods are where they're supposed to be. There's a lot of punctuation errors. I mean, this book is really bad. It's like remarkably bad. My mother used to play once a month. She would go and play a game called Bunko. And she would always come home, and I'd always make a deal with her and say, Mom, you got to wake me up when you get home. Just let me know that you're home. And she always would. And she used to win something called the Booby Prize. And I was too young to know what the Booby Prize was. All I know is my mom came home with a gift, and it was kind of cool. Well, when I got older, I found out that the Booby Prize goes to whoever plays Bunko and gets last place. If you're the absolute worst player, they give you a prize as a gift. My buddy Scott Davenport wrote the Booby Prize.